Nice to meet you, Andy.
Pleased to meet you.
So happy to have you with us in Elephant's showroom today.
It's always a pleasure to be in Hong Kong and to be with my friends from Elephant.
Yeah, I know you're an expert in speaker industry for so many years.
Yes.
And I learned you're introducing the very classic speaker, which is the LS358 by Rogers.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about what is actually this classic speaker?
So it stems back from the early 1970s, where the BBC, around the back end of the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, there was a lot of research done by the BBC, obviously the British Broadcasting Company, into the development of modern sort of materials into loudspeakers, which was essentially coming from the paper era in the mid-60s into the new plastics, particularly Bextrine, and to a certain extent with the tweeters was the mylar domes. So the BBC were engineering this new sound in terms of setting a new reference, a new monitor reference for their recording studios, and particularly a smaller scale version for outside broadcasting vans. So the BBC would have vans, they would go out to events and they would sit there and they would use the 358 as a recording monitor outside broadcasting. So it's listed as a grade 2 BBC monitors. The BBC rate their monitors, and the LS358 is an outside broadcasting monitor.
So what is the idea of bring out the reissue of this Reborn of the classic speaker of the LS358 by Rogers? Because I know that there are already some LS358 in the market. So what are the major difference part of the highlights of this Reborn classic of LS358?
So when we look at the market in terms of the understanding is that the BBC monitor sound has a very good reference, and over the years Rogers has actually manufactured over 50,000 pairs of LS358s, so we have a deep understanding of how to assemble and test this speaker. So when we look at the market, we decided that maybe the original one was the best. So the original sounding 15 ohm LS358 has a little bit more character, has a slightly more warmer presentations than the later 11 ohm version. So we went right back to the original BBC specification on the design. So this would incorporate the voice coil resistances on the tweeter and the woofer being slightly higher value, so instead of being sort of 5 ohms they're nearer 8 ohms, and specifically the crossover is then designed with the laminated coils on the choke side. There's an adjustment tapping for the high frequency adjustment to allow for the variances in the sensitivity of the tweeter, and there's 2 coils on the low frequency side, and again these are laminated transformer type inductors. The later type 358s have a iron core, iron dust ferrite transformer, which doesn't have the sound that the earlier version has. So it's a matching of the impedance of the sort of 15 ohm is going back to the original plastic. What we're doing now with the classic LS358 is we get obviously the plywood birch cabinet to the BBC specification with the tie-down grille. So the birch ply cabinet is made in the UK. The drive unit, we tooled up the new Bextrine cone, so we have a new Bextrine cone, and we assemble the cone into the magnet system in the UK. And what we do is we apply the doping. There's 2 coats. You have to put a first coat on, let it dry, and then put a second coat on. So this is all done by hand in the UK. Then once we've doped the drive unit, you have to leave them 24 hours to dry, 1 coat, 24 hours for the next coat. Then once we do a batch of drive units, then we measure them and pair match them. Okay. And then the same with the tweeter. We get the dome, the mylar dome, we assemble it into the magnet system in the UK, we measure them, we test them, and we pair match them. So this is all done in the UK factory. Okay. So once we've got the computer test measure, we measure up the drive units and we pair match them. Okay. And again, all that is done in our UK factory. Right. We're all hand assembled. All done in the UK, and then we package up and then obviously ship out.
Right. So can you share with us some of the juicy part, what the efforts that you're trying to chase back the fingerprint of this original classics LS358?
Yes, again, if you look at it, it's a matter of we obviously have the 15 ohm as a reference. It sounds a bit brutal, but it's just a matter of taking it apart. You know, obviously we have the BBC cabinet drawings, we have the original circuit diagrams because we have the historical data, and then we look at the modern manufacturing methods and see where we can replicate the same. So, for example, like the baffle, it's not veneered; it's just a stained plywood baffle like the original. Some people veneer the baffle. It's not called for in the original design, so we don't veneer the baffle. the way the baffle is screwed into the hardwood batten. So there's hardwood beech battens in the cabinet. There's no machine thread or insert for the screw. It's a proper wood screw that screws directly into the wooden cabinet. And these little details kind of, sum up, shall we say, to make the classic sound. And then on the back of the terminal connections, what we've done is the original one had a 4mm socket, so we now have a 4mm socket, but we improved these and we silver plate them. So there's no big chunky audiophile terminal post on the back for bi-wiring. We've just gone back to the original connections. Okay. So then again in the drive units, what we do with the drive units is we get the drive units and we have to go back to the doping, because a lot of the finish on the 35A on the B110 is the doping. So we do the doping by hand. Again in the UK we put 2 coats of doping on and then we pair match the drive units. The tweeters we assemble, we get the mylar dome formed, we pair match the tweeters, and then we assemble the baffle units, and then we match the baffle units to the reference. So it's all taking it back to a reference, from the original 1974 design.
I see. Do you have some reference that some remarkable people, just musicians and celebrities, are actually using and enjoying this LS358?
Actually, I think I don't personally know of any famous people that are using it, but the biggest not respect or accolade I can give to it is the previous year when I was in the Carnegie Hall in New York. Okay. So we're listening to Beethoven's Third in the orchestra, and we have a box right at the back of the concert hall. And then when you come home and you have your LS358 and a suitable amplifier to drive them, a tube amplifier, or it could be a quad or something like that, and if you sit there and close your eyes, you have a similar sound stage to the real live event. And it's quite remarkable that the 358 positions and keeps the scale relationship between the instruments. It preserves it very well. You're not going to get the full orchestral dynamic, of course, because you don't have the sensitivity. But in terms of the structure of the music and the interplay between the musicians, it's a very, very good reference and can take you straight back to the concert.
I see. So at last, do you have some good suggestions to our audience about how to utilize it or how to manage it?
Again, it's one of those things, because you have to give it some respect, as it is a reference monitor, so you have to partner it. Most audiophiles will have a decent selection of equipment and maybe more than one pair of either 358s or even another pair of speakers. But if you get them set up, you could position them obviously on audiophile sound to give you more audiophile sound. But again, talking to our colleagues, you can put them on a bookcase. You can put them. The BBC have them upside down, up in a higher level. Or you can just put them, on a windowsill or something like. I use them at home in the bay window. Okay, and again, they have this ability, because of the design and the dispersion effect of them, to fill the room. You wouldn't think it's possible for such a small loudspeaker to make such a room-filling sound. Okay, so once you've set them up properly, you're rewarded with a really special, tangible midband that even modern speakers today don't come close to.
I see. So thank you very much, Andy.
Okay, it's a pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye bye.